Coming up on Mountain News this morning, the Commonwealth shows an outpouring amount of support for those who knew Scott County Deputy Caleb Conley. And we hear from a Scott County couple who had a terrifying encounter with the one accused of taking the deputy's life.
Dedicated to Eastern and Southern Kentucky, this is WYMT Mountain News this morning.
Good morning, y'all. It is almost 6 o'clock here. I'm Dakota Makeris. Thank you so much for joining us on this Wednesday, the middle of the work week. Let's head it over to meteorologist Cameron Aaron for a check of our Wednesday forecast. And Cameron, it's looking good so far.
Yep, looking good this morning, looking good this afternoon. Really, the rest of your Wednesday looks good, but we are watching out for some changes by this weekend. But not this morning, though. Here's a live look right now from the Pikeville Medical Center. As you can see, a really nice sunrise there back in the distance. The current temperature is comfortable at 57 degrees. Most of us waking up in the upper 40s and lower 50s at this hour, and we are dry across the region thanks to high pressure just off to the east. But notice we are tracking a cold front over the Great Lakes. This will continue to push off into our direction as we go into tonight. No moisture involved with that, but we will watch out for some cooler temperatures by tonight, also into your Thursday. But as you wake up and walk out the door, we are dry. Temperatures upper 40s and lower 50s. We do warm up into the 60s around 9 a.m. Also warming up into the 80s by this afternoon. Again, we do stay dry, but notice as we get towards your weekend, we are watching out for more showers. All those details coming up in just a few minutes. Dakota?
All right, Cameron, thank you. An outpouring of support for Scott County Deputy Caleb Conley's family, his fellow sheriff's deputies, and his community. The 35-year-old was shot and killed on Monday on I-75 during a traffic stop. Grayson Passmore talked with some of the ones who used yesterday to pay their respects.
A procession only fitting for the veteran and Scott County Sheriff's deputy. When shortly after his passing Monday night, dozens of officers from departments across the region gathered to drive Deputy Caleb Conley from Lexington to Frankfort.
It's painful because it's just a family, a family that's gone without a dad, family that's gone without a son, a family that's gone without a husband. It's just heartbreaking.
Then without fail, hundreds more joined in the procession to send Deputy Conley from Frankfort back home to Cynthiana.
Just, through high school, we both went to Harrison County High School together. Small town, so was always running around on the weekends together.
Before he would go on to serve in the U.S. Army for 8 years and as a deputy in Scott County for another 4 years after that. Deputy Conley spent his time with friends like Brian Wasson. Wasson knew him as a teenager, riding four-wheelers together in the summer. Now he's come to say his goodbyes.
You could probably go all the way down Main Street and see the same amount of people standing on every corner, looking to pay their respect.
And Wasson is right.
It's a very heavy. They're still trying to process, this whole horrible situation. We definitely lost a really good one. So he will definitely be missed here and also back home in Cynthiana.
For these communities, the time to grieve has only begun, hours after the procession, and the sheriff's office remained closed. Deputy Conley's patrol car was turned into a memorial, where people brought flowers, pictures, and just took a few needed moments.
Just hope that the community can stay together and pray to everyone from above that this never happens again.
In Georgetown, Grayson Passmore, WKYT.
Deputy Conley leaves behind a wife and small children. Yesterday, the sheriff's office announced the Deputy Caleb Conley Memorial Fund. The fund will help benefit Deputy Conley's family. You can make a donation to the fund at any Whitaker bank. The suspect is 45-year-old Stephen Xiangsheng, who has a long criminal history and is facing numerous charges, including murder of a police officer. He'll be arraigned today. Well, a couple in Georgetown found themselves staring down the barrel of a gun being held by a shooting suspect. That was right after he allegedly had just shot and killed Deputy Conley. While the encounter only lasted a few minutes, the couple says it felt like an eternity and went from a simple request for help to a forceful demand for their car and included threats on their life. The suspect had approached another neighbor asking for their vehicle or a ride, but they refused. That is when the man returned to Gary and Rebecca McQuain's home and forced his way inside.
He finally got in the kitchen, and he never made a threat to shoot her, but he said to her 4 different times, he said, "I want the keys to the van right now or I'm going to shoot him." And he kept pointing back at me with the gun.
And then in just a couple minutes, I realized there's blood drops all on the floor where this guy was standing. So I don't know where he was bleeding from, but he was bleeding because neither one of us, thankfully, were injured.
The couple's white Dodge Caravan was found abandoned in Lexington. The suspect left his Nissan Murano in their driveway, which was towed away from the scene late Monday night. Well, Stephen Shang had a lengthy criminal history prior to Monday's events. Garrett Weimer has more on what we know about the suspect's history.
In 1997, online court records show Shang pleaded guilty in Campbell County to marijuana possession. He was fined and sentenced to 2 years of probation. In 2009, he was found guilty in Kenton County of receiving stolen property. He was sentenced to 1 year in jail. 5 years later, he pleaded guilty in Campbell County to 3 counts of receiving stolen property and being a persistent felony offender. Those charges were also from 2009. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison, running concurrently with 2 other cases out of Ohio. In 2016, he was found guilty of receiving stolen property, theft by unlawful taking, and again being a persistent felony offender. These charges were from 2010. He was fined and sentenced to 5 years in prison. Just 2 weeks ago, Central Bank filed a complaint against him in court. They claim Shang owed them close to $12,000 after defaulting on a loan for an ATV.
That was Garrett Weimer reporting. Now, if you were doing the math, you know his being sentenced to 20 years in prison just 9 years ago does not quite add up. State parole board records show he was eligible for parole in April 2021 and then again in January of 2022. Right now, we are still waiting to know more about when exactly he was released and the conditions of his parole. Well, Monday's shooting comes as we approach 1 year since a police ambush in the Allen community of Floyd County. 3 officers and a K-9 died and several others were hurt. Floyd County Sheriff John Hunt says his department is shifting some of its funding to help buy new equipment, saying the safety of officers is more important than ever before.
We've upped the grade of our vests to encounter high-powered sniper-type rifles that we didn't have before. Little things like that that I feel I have the responsibility to provide to my employees, to my deputies, to make sure they go home at night. And listen, when you look a wife in the eyes and tell her that her husband's not coming home, you'll spend your own money. I mean, you know, you'll dip into your personal pocket to say, I mean, I got to make sure this don't happen again.
Well, the sheriff says as they approach the 1 year mark in June, there will be more memorial services to honor the fallen officers.
Another nice day is on tap across the mountains for your Wednesday. We stay dry under a sunny sky, and that dry weather continues as you walk out the door this morning. Here's a live look right now from our friends in Pulaski County over in Somerset. That current temperature 54 degrees under that clear sky this morning. So a really nice morning is on the way for most of us. Maybe some patchy fog in some places, but for most of us, a clean sweep up on radar, and that will continue as we go into the afternoon as well. Those high temperatures warming up into the upper 70s and lower 80s as we get into Wednesday afternoon. We are watching out though for a cold front later on tonight that will bring some slightly cooler air to the mountains as we go into tonight, also onto your Thursday. But really the forecast looks quiet for the rest of this week until we get into the weekend. We are watching out for more rain chances and then a warm up by next week. All those details coming up in just a few minutes. Dakota?
All right, Cameron, thank you so much. It's 6:08 when we come back here on Mountain News this morning. We expect to hear a big announcement today from Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, which is set to add another contender for the 2024 presidential election.